Okay, good morning. Thank you very much for participating in this presentation of the preliminary findings, conclusions and recommendations of the final evaluation of MEDIPIED. We were 4 evaluators in the team. As Enrique has said, 3 of us are here. I'm Noelia, Cristina and Carlos, and Javier Carmona, he did quality control and he stayed in Spain. We have divided the presentation in 3 parts. They asked us to do it quite quickly, so we foresaw to make a presentation of 30 minutes, and later we have some time and you can freely ask us any questions. In your table you have a brochure with the main conclusions and recommendations that you can also read. There's a little bit more information that we are giving here, and the final report will be ready, the long report, by mid-December. So on this brochure there's no information about methodology, but we thought it was interesting to share with you a little bit how was our approach in the evaluation. So basically, it was per the terms of reference. It was already framed. Some of the main things that were framed I would like to share with you. Basically, it's the purpose. What is the purpose of the evaluation? It was said by the terms of reference to use findings to demonstrate achievements, also to recommend practice for the sustainability of a potential future phase of the project. Then the scope, the time frame. Well, it's a final evaluation, but documents, information was gathered from, was analyzed from the beginning of 2014 until more or less September, October 2017. That's when we did the field work. Of course, geographical coverage was all 18 partner countries, but field work was done only in review model in Greece, where we met many of you. And there was also participation there of most of the countries. And of course, target group, well, all different stakeholders of the project, no? European Commission, actors, DEFCO, JRC, SANTE, ECDC, the consortium of FIAP and Instituto Carlos III, CBRN, of course, all the partner countries, the ministries of health of all the partner countries, and also advisory countries of the EU, or institutes of public health, and other third parties related to the project. And it was also framed by the terms of reference that the project was going to be evaluated according to the DAC OECD criteria to evaluate development cooperation projects. So as Enrique has said, it was not meant to evaluate the FETP, particularly, but the project as a whole regarding the standard criteria of relevance, internal and external coherence, efficiency, ownership and participation, effectiveness, impact prediction, and sustainability. Okay, regarding this frame, what was our Prevals approach? Basically, we did criteria analysis with systemic approach based on the results chain. This approach is designed to assess the intervention's achievements in the DAC OECD criteria through an increased understanding of why the observed results have occurred or not, and the roles played by the intervention's design, structure, and processes, and other internal and external factors. Thus, the project is evaluated as a whole, as I said before, understanding that each dimension affects the others and also the final result. So what are the steps in this approach? Well, we set out the problem to be addressed by the project. We reconstruct the causal chain and the risks to it. Then we define the evaluation questions that were not defined by the TOR, just some, there were some ideas of questions, but were not defined. And we define them, we define the indicators to measure each of the questions, and the data collection tools and techniques, which is basically, we design the evaluation matrix. Then we gather the existing evidence on design, structure, processes, and results, and assemble and assess the performance story and challenges to it according to the set criteria. So the result of step 1 and 2 is here. I'm not going to go through the whole causal chain that we reconstructed. You can see it on the last page of the brochure you have on your table. I just want to stop in. Okay. Thank you. I just want to stop on a few topics. Basically, the green circles that you see here are the 8 evaluation questions, 1 question per criteria, and we have placed them on the dimension and the area of the causal chain we think it represents better. So the first 3 questions are more related to design. Question 1 measures the significance of Medipiet regarding public health, local, national, and regional needs and priorities. So it's the question related to relevance. Question 2 assesses the internal coherences. This means the logic of objectives, results, activities, and the strategy designed for the achievement of these objectives. Question 3 measures the external coherences. That means it analyzes how Medipiet complements to other programs, related programs in the same territory. Question 4 and 5 are more related, although all the questions are interrelated to different dimensions, but they are more related to structure and processes. And question 4 measures the efficiency. That means it measures if the consumption of resources and the project management has been efficient with respect to the results achieved. And question 5 is regarding participation and ownership, and it measures how was the participation of the partner countries and how is ownership felt by them regarding Medipiet. And then the last 3 questions are more on the results dimension. Question 6 measures if the results of the reconstructed intervention logic have been achieved. And it's subdivided, you will see it in conclusions. And it's divided in 4 sub-questions, basically regarding the reconstructed results chain. From one side, we want to measure if there has been an enhancement of public health national training institutions in surveillance system, outbreak investigation, scientific research, and response for biothreats. Sub-question 2 measures if there has been an enhancement of public health national workforce capacities in the same domains. Question 3 on effects measures basically if there has been established a strong regional expert training network and community of practice for public health threats. And sub-question 4, if collaboration among international collaboration among among EU and non-EU countries has been enhanced. Question 7 is regarding impact, and basically it evaluates the contribution of Medipiet to improving health security in European Union and non-European partner countries in terms of detection, investigation, response, and prevention of communicable diseases threats. And finally, question 8 is related to sustainability and measures if positive effects are expected to last in time once finalized. As I said before, regarding each of these questions, we define some indicators and some tools to collect the data. So what are these tools? What did we do? We conducted 62 in-depth interviews with representatives of all the countries, all 18 partner countries, and also 3 advisory countries. We did 1 focus group, mainly with fellows, but also with some external participants, 17 in total. We launched an online survey with 189 respondents with a 38% response rate. And we did on-site observation in review model in Greece, as I said before, where we met with many of you. We also consulted or reviewed over 60 documents related to the project, of course, but also related to the countries and to documents of the European Union cooperation policy in general, and also many FETP program-related documents. And with these sources, we did triangulation of sources and analyzing, making quantitative and qualitative analysis. It's also important to highlight that we had some limitations to the evaluation. From one side is the time frame of the evaluation. As I said before, it's a final evaluation, but it's an ongoing project. We stopped gathering information in October, more or less, so possibly there are some effects in the last phase of the project that are not reflected in our evaluation, since we had to stop gathering information by some time. Then also we had limited access to information. From one side, regarding documents produced by MEDIPIET in 2017, we got it a little late and also incomplete, so there possibly there are documents that are, are already produced or will be produced in the future that we could not take them into account in the evaluation. Also, we missed a joint database of trainees, of individuals, with participation, explaining the participation of each individual in all training events. We think that would have been a very interesting tool or document to make further analysis with it, and also to decide the sample and so on. And also, it was foreseen that we would interview all national focal points, and finally there were 3 national focal points that we could not interview. We had some constraints to measure progress. When we designed the evaluation, according to the project documents, we thought that we would have some tools that would allow us have a kind of baseline and afterwards see the progress, like the competency tool, pre-post testing, training site reviews, and finally we didn't have access to this information, which would have allowed us to measure better progress. We had time constraints in the sense that the evaluation has been conducted in a very short time frame, and we are doing this presentation before we have the final report. We will be ready on the 15th December, so we had to hurry a little bit. And then maybe there was some bias from one side because we had a very low response rate in the survey, and also because, we did the in-depth interviews in Greece, and mainly related to external participants. Probably they had a different profile to other external participants that have maybe participated in other modules that were not the ones with abstracts accepted. With this, I finish. Basically, as I said before, through the different techniques, I just want to show you the evidence chain. We have identified the different findings, and with these findings, which you will find in our complete report in December, from the conclusions are derived from these findings, and the recommendations are derived from the conclusions and the lessons learned. In this presentation, we will focus exclusively on conclusions and recommendations. I'm finished, and now I pass the word to Cristina.
Hello, good morning to all. Thanks for being here. We are now presenting the conclusions. As Noelia said, conclusions are built on the criteria of the program, on the questions that she was mentioning. This is, in general, most of the conclusions are related to these criteria. But there was a cross-cutting conclusion that we are presenting the first, that was appearing in all the different questions of the evaluation, that there is big difference among the countries in terms of achievement, and we observe especially in participation, ownership, the results, and therefore also the impact. We also saw that this difference in achievements were somehow linked to two main factors that are, from one side, the country's perception of the project opportunities, what the project could serve to their priorities, but also, and very important, the access to the fellowship program. For the country's perception, we also saw that there was other factors that was affecting this perception, let's say. That was, from one side, countries who were in discussions for getting access to the EU, countries, for example, who had already existing EFTP, the country size also, and in general, the matching of the national strategy on capacity building with the MEDIPIET, and sometimes the existing even of a clear strategy at country level. In terms of relevance, MEDIPIET is based, relevance is assessing a bit how the program is relevant to the needs of the countries. Then in this sense, MEDIPIET is based on the rationale that field epidemiology training programs are an effective mechanism. Literature reveals that, to develop public health capacities oriented to action. This is a need from all the countries, the need of enhancing the public health capacities. But MEDIPIET project was very focused on activities rather than problems, and has not been considering the time frame for the rationale of the EFTP. To have a EFTP is effective with a wider time frame. Okay, in terms of internal coherence, that tries to see how is the strategy, the design of the project, MEDIPIET logic frame, that it's like the causal chain, or how from the problem we get to the results and the objectives. MEDIPIET logic frame lacks consistency on the definition of the objectives and results, describing mainly activities in its place and ending up in an activity approach instead of a strategic approach. Okay. This, at the end, affects the understanding of the purpose, if the purpose is to do activities or what are the results behind, and has contributed to divergent perceptions and approaches, and also make very difficult a result-based management and monitoring. In terms of external coherence, seeing how MEDIPIET program interacts with programs out of MEDIPIET and with the national policies of the countries, MEDIPIET is fully aligned with European Union external action, but it's not a priority sector among its current funding instrument of stability and peace. At the level of countries, there is a high alignment of MEDIPIET with national public health policies, but rather modest synergies with other regional programs and networks in the region. These synergies that has been, during the implementation of the program, has been mainly at operational level, for activities, for trainings. Okay. In terms of efficiency, now we are more in the part of structure and process and to the management of the implementation of the program. The broad number of actors involved in MEDIPIET, that they are different structures, different domains, have made the project quite complex. Nevertheless, activities has been successfully implemented with even a higher coverage than expected. For example, in the design, although sometimes there are not very detailed the final outcomes in terms of fellows, but also in terms of trainers trained, what was foreseen was at the end of the program higher. Or in terms for management, monitoring is very important because it allows you to see how much you are going, if you are, and then to adapt your management and to change things. As we said before, it was difficult, and MediPiet monitoring has been activity-based and not result-based. It was like based on the training activities, etc., etc. And then the monitoring was at this level and was making that feedback on training activities was used to implement them, to improve the implementation of the following training activities. There has been also some budgetary and operational adaptations regarding the initial project proposal that some has been accomplished, like for example, the faster integration of the Black Sea countries, while other implementation difficulties have persisted over the years, as for example, logistics and, for example, e-learning, also that was not developed, or has been delayed as the focus on communication and the increase of scientific coordinators. In general, MediPiet is a costly program if we are focusing on the number of beneficiaries, results, and impact. The evaluation team could not have the whole information, but has reconstructed a bit to try to identify individual beneficiaries for training activities. There is a very rough estimation that will go from 387 to 431 what we call direct beneficiaries that has been assisting in training activities. In terms of participation and ownership, and this is somehow also linked, as we said in the cross-cutting conclusion, the intensity of countries' participation and therefore ownership perception depends on several factors, as potential integration to EU, the involvement also of the countries in the preliminary phase, having EFTP, the workload that training centers have in their daily routine, and also the national focal point profile, technical, more non-technical. Partner countries' role in MediPiet is generally perceived as advisory to the program, with limited decision with limited capacity in decision making. Okay, now we are entering the block of results that I think, or the effects of the program. As Noelia said, we have done 4 big groups of results. One is what we call institutional, that it's very focused at training center level. It's not, but it's focusing what are the effects that has had at training center. There is also the results on, let's say, at individual level, what we call public health workforce. There is the effects in terms of networking, if the network has been created, etc., and in terms of collaboration. We are starting with the institutional, focusing on training center, and the evaluation have identified effects on public health training institutions, mainly in the domain of surveillance. Most of training centers, their main competencies are primarily related to this area. Examples of this kind of effects are evaluation of surveillance systems, improved quality of data analysis, introduction or adaptation of new surveillance systems, guidelines, establishment of thresholds, and development of case definitions. In outbreak investigation and response, we saw incipient results and effects. As well, part of the training centers are having more an advisory role in these domains. In outbreak investigation, for example, the main effects reported were introduction of analytical methods, a more structured working and development, or increased awareness to adapt existing protocols for outbreak investigation. And in the area of response, there has been few reports, and these ones are related to participation on development or development of response plans at general level, or developing specific response plans. We also assess for the institutional effects the effects at the level of capacity building. In this sense, the national training sites and centers' capacity to train in field epidemiology has been incipiently strengthened. The evaluation identified that 7 countries, 5 of them hosting fellows, have performed already cascade trainings based on MEDIPIET. Other countries has used material or has introduced in their residency programs or academic curriculum contents of MEDIPIET. In this sense also, and again with a very rough estimation, the evaluation estimate that around 170 trainers, or more than 170 trainers have been trained through TOTs. This, in the program, in the logic framework original of the program, there was the indicator that there was that at least should be 30 trainers trained per year. That means 120. Then, in this sense, the effects in terms of trainers trained is higher than at least was expected. Okay. Sorry, I was not. No. Okay. Sorry. In terms of workforce, of individuals, trainees widely consider MEDIPIET training activities of high quality. Fellows and regular external participants find that trainings had effects on their work and have contributed to increase their capacities. However, the scope of intensively trained professionals is limited to 24 that has participated, 22 graduated fellows. Trainees, mainly fellows, reported increased capacities on being more confident, eager to present scientific communication, more oriented to action, and having increased awareness of multisectorial approaches. In terms of specific skills, main improvements have been reported on statistic analysis and communication. For example, also in terms of abstracts, there has been, through the survey, there was that at least 32 people who reported in the survey, they really consider that MEDIPIET has helped them to be accepted in other conferences beyond MEDIPIET and has been contributed to their capacity to develop scientific communication. In terms of network, most of the participants of MEDIPIET considers that this is one of the main added values of MEDIPIET and has contributed to develop a public health professionals network. This network is informal and mainly works as a channel to share experiences, knowledge, and information. In terms of collaboration, formal collaboration among countries is still incipient, but in some countries, MEDIPIET has opened the way for future cooperation, and in most of countries, MEDIPIET has brought public health training closer to aspects of CBRN. In terms of impact, MEDIPIET's impact on health security, when is not yet measurable at this stage. Yet there are some actions in place that can improve health security as countries who have introduced new surveillance systems, guidelines for outbreak investigations and or case definitions, and development of preparedness and response plans. In terms of sustainability, during the evaluation, most of the people we gather information, they consider that capacities already developed at country level and changes in the way of working will remain, mainly for fellows and supervisors, if they continue working in the institutions. But the dissemination more at country level is not yet guaranteed. Informal networking, in general, will continue. Finally, this is the last conclusion of sustainability. When we were doing the evaluation, we perceived that when we were talking about sustainability was the sustainability of what has been already done. In this sense, with the current approach and scope, Medipiet does not seem to be sustainable if sustainable is focusing on maintenance of the same structure. In this sense, implementing a 10 years EVTP as requested by Medipiet partners can be a tool to develop national capacities that enable continuous education for field epidemiologists at national level, but is not a sufficient condition for reaching sustainability if there is no developed a strategy on capacity building at country level. Let's say that it's important to focus more on the results and the outcomes of the instead of structures. I think it's already.
Good morning. First of all, many thanks for inviting us to this session and to share these preliminary results with the whole audience. So we appreciate very much to have this opportunity. I will try to concentrate right now in the main ideas for recommendations, because I feel that we don't have so much time, and discussion is very important with the audience, exchange and discussion afterwards. So I will try to make shorter my small presentation on recommendation in order to be able to have time for the further discussion. The first and most relevant recommendation from our side is we do recommend to maintain, to support a new phase of Medipiet. This is our main recommendation based on the evaluation that we have been making. Many reasons for that we can discuss afterwards, but there is a lot of reasons and arguments to sustain these strong recommendations to keep and maintain Medipiet in the future. But also we do recommend a shift, some relevant changes in Medipiet for the future. Changes in sense of improvement, changes based on the lessons learned and the experience that we have had till now. In relation to the design of the project, we recommend to define clear problems based on national priorities and needs, focus on the countries with more needs, which are more in need. Not all the countries are in the same level of need. This is clear. A result-based approach to assure a comprehensive strategy and consider the regional context temporally and also geographically. The second recommendation is related to this fine-tuning training component. It's basically to adapt Medipiet training component to the country's capacity building strategy. We think that it's important to have a clear strategy on capacity building in each country, and then Medipiet to adapt to the strategy at that level. Develop, review national capacity building strategy, involving all the departments, staff, and the type of mechanism in each country, like VTPs, specialization, continuous training, and the situation because it's also diverse. identify expected capacities to be built in surveillance, outbreak management, and so on, detect the areas to be enhanced through the new Medipiet project and to be taken, and include internal on-the-job learning process and the scientific support to training centers beyond the training seats, not only to the training seats, but also to the training centers involved. Well, has been already mentioned that the regional network is generally agreed by everybody like one of the main added value of this project. So continue supporting the regional network. This is for us very important for the future. But clarify a little bit the networking purpose. For the time being, is working clearly, but is working at the informal level, among professionals, among people, among individuals, and in that case it's recommendable to identify clearly the purposes and the mechanisms, to keep at individual level, if that is the case as a community of practice, integrate other field epidemiology professionals in partner countries, in the network, I mean, integrate more professionals in the networking, develop virtual space to serve and to support this networking idea, whatever tools that you want to mention, mailing lists, ways to interactive platforms, and so on. And if there is other network purposes, like for instance, to formalize more this networking, then is needed to specify clearly the mechanism to do that. Okay. Shift focus towards national needs to enhance ownership. Participation is clear that cannot be expected to be the same among such diverse countries and different countries. Then promote and support countries to identify their action plans for capacity building. We consider it's important that the countries, they have their own action plans based on the clear identification on needs and priorities and so on. Concentrate then the TCF action on common interest areas concerning most countries at least, because not for all the countries are the same, exactly the same specific topics, and use the working groups for topic interesting only for some countries, like for instance fellowship. Yes? Promotes countries' commitment, focus sustainability on outcomes and goals rather than structural activities. Well, it is clear that sustaining public health workforce enhancement for the future will depend on national resources, basically, and therefore focus Medipiet action on components where national partners have more difficulties to interact without external funding. For instance, the core regional training, the conference like this one or other possible conference, the e-learning activities and materials and so on. So concentrate on these basic things that the countries have real difficulties to find external funding. To formalize obligations to professionals, to fellows who receive an important investment for the European Union, and very important for them also the strategy on job retention, the dissemination of knowledge, the fellows, the new fellows participating as trainers, as supervisors, even in regional activities also. And yes, participation in regional training was already mentioned here. And encourage national ministers of health to promote career path opportunities to retain fellows in their countries. Next, please. Well, promote a strategic collaboration. In this sense, in this question, we identified that there is a room for improvement in the sense of complementarity, synergies, and collaboration with other related networks and other international organizations. Clearly, we consider that here there is a room for improvement. Explore more strategic ways to interact and complement with other European Union and non-European Union programs and networks, like EPIET, of course, this is clear, ENFINET and other related networks. Strengthen very much collaboration with ECDC. This is also very clear, and for many reasons, but also for the potential contribution of resources and expertise is another program supported by the European Union. There are very similar programs, EPIET and MEDIPIET, and with the same methodological and conceptual basis. There is, a lot of arguments, and also because there are already established bilateral relations with some partner countries in this field. So basically, strongly collaboration with ECDC for MEDIPIET. And finally, establish synergy with International Health Organization, WHO, which, as you know better, is the main reference for health security. Next. Well, recommendation says 7, this is 7 and 8 is going to be more operational kind of recommendations. First, plan realistic from the beginning and balanced allocation of funds according to activity needs. This, based in the experience that we have had, we consider is important for the future. Integrate a saving approach and austerity approach with managing resources, promoting contribution of involved countries or institutions, and to do in general more saving approach. Also increase flexibility managing budget and expenses. Flexibility is extremely important for such a complex project. You need really flexibility to be able to manage the funds and so on, and increase transparency in budget management to enhance trust and reliability. And recommendation 8, in general, reinforce personal and result-based management. In relation to the personal management, define from the very beginning clearly responsibilities, roles, and hierarchy of project team members and institutions involved. Also adapt the staff profiles to roles and activities, and fine-tune team composition to foresee workload in each component. And concerning results-based management, implement a monitoring and evaluation system from the very beginning, from the start, identifying and implementing key indicators to be able to measure results and data sources, and being very clear about who, when, and how to collect the data. And finally, systematize and interconnect data to learn and adapt a strategy towards results. So these are, I think, So thank you, merci beaucoup, muchas gracias, Fala Puno, and we will present them.
We are going now to open a round of questions. We are really waiting for that. We would like to have your feedback, comments.
Thank you very much. Nada Rosson from Lebanon. I have 3 points. The first one concerning conclusion 7 about this training is activity-based, not result-based. But MEDIPIET is, first of all, it's a training program. It's not WHO. So it's based to acquire people core competences specified during phase 1. So here is the idea that we have a list of core competences that our public workforce has to have to acquire, and that's why we have these activities, training activities. We have modules, we have projects to acquire these competences. It's not an institution to solve the problems of the countries. So we need to build our capacities, and the activities is the way to do exercise. As in the school, we do exercise to learn how to apply the rules. And my second point concerning conclusion number 10, having limit capacity in decision making. Yes, for today, but in 10 years from now, it will be different. Our fellows are 1 or 2 years old, so give them some time to be decision makers. And my third comment is about the survey. You have a response rate of 37%. I didn't receive any email concerning this survey. I would like to have more information. Thank you.
Okay, regarding the first point about if it's activity-oriented, this is what we found as the main aspect of the Medipied program. We are evaluating like a development program. Always, capacity building is a tool, is not an end. Even if you define the competencies, of course, the competencies can give you the expected result. We are capacitating ourselves in order to work better, but to work better for what? This is what we were missing. We did this casual chain from the narratives of the program, because in the logic framework of the program, it was not clear. The goal was to train people. In a development program, this is not a goal, it's an activity. It's in the sense that we are saying that the program is very focused on activity. Because if you have and also because there is 18 countries, maybe the competencies are clear, the program is very clear, we are saying it's, we recommend to continue, but we have to go out from our program and see for what we want in order to match if this is going. And because of that, in the recommendations, we think the program should try to identify which are the priorities of the country, even at, maybe some countries want to reinforce more some competencies, others not. There is 18 countries. This is not only for fellows, we did the evaluation for the whole countries. Then because of that, we saw that it was very limited on the activities then. If you want to be accountable, but also to manage and to see if your program is going well, you have to know if the effects you want to create are happening, okay? In the conclusion 10, this is a conclusion that was talking about ownership. We are not saying that the country should have or not have more decision making, but normally decision making is linked to greater ownership. And because we were analyzing the ownership, this is a conclusion, this conclusion comes from many findings, then we are trying to summarize in a very little space the main inputs of that.
Yes, but also it is related to this program. Of course, in the future, but we are analyzing, we are evaluating this 4 years program. So during this Medipied phase, this is what is felt by the countries, because this is basically a question that was on the survey, and what we received, and also we asked people we interviewed, what we received is that the perception is that in this Medipied 4 years, 2014 to now, decision-making was limited. The role of the 18 countries was more advisory. That is, what we received from you, the input you gave us in the interviews and in the survey.
Yeah, for the survey, it's true that we were running very, very tight in terms of time. We got off all the emails and we sent it to all the people. I know that there was like 15, 17 emails returned, no? But in general, it's true that because this is done through an online platform, that the value maybe didn't reach, or maybe it depends also on the email configuration. It could go also to spam or something like this. But we send it, and at the end, if you want, you can also, we get the database, we send it to a lot of people.
We got the list from the management team, and we send it to 400 something. We don't know exactly to whom, because we are external. We don't know. It's true that we received 18, more or less, that it wasn't possible to send it. And as Cristina said, sometimes, as it comes from an email from Proeval, sometimes it depends on your email configuration, it can go to the spam. We cannot control it. We sent 2 reminders to people who didn't answer, but I'm sorry if some of you didn't receive it, but it's a little bit out of our control. When we talk about the 38% response rate, it's related to the emails we sent. actually, to the 400 and something we sent. But we don't control exactly if we send it to all the right people. That's out of our control.
Yeah. Also, if the email is used or not, you know, maybe there is people who have several emails, and maybe the one we have is the one they don't use. Ismail, yeah.
Thank you. The truth is that during our discussion among us, we really wanted to empower the role of TCF, empower the role of the countries on decision making. So this is our goal in the next step. And yes, I'm sure that most of us, we were referring this issue, that countries should participate more on decision making for substantial activities of the project, of the program. Thank you.
Well, we have here and there. I don't know. I think
Thank
first
you.
will be the...
Thank you, colleagues, for the presentations. Frank van Look, European Commission, DG Sante. There are a number of quite usable recommendations in your list. Thanks for that. But there is a fundamental difference which divides me and maybe also participants here in the room with your findings. Nada alluded to it, the previous question. It's the fact that for you, capacity building is a tool. And I understand from the perspective of the development process you're looking at. Now, the World Health Organization has defined new international health regulations where capacity building is the output, is the target, is the activity. It's not a tool for us. And if I can make one request, in your final document, it would be nice to have a reference to this essential difference, because it makes a hell of a difference for us.
Okay.
And I understand the outcome, the perspective that you have, but I think on a number of issues we have slightly a different perspective.
In this sense, in fact, we are considering part of the capacity building as output, but not as an outcome. You know, this is the way, and I'm sure even in the international health regulations, it's an output to get an outcome, to improve, you know, the capacities of the country to respond to something. There was also, yeah.
Okay, I'm Marko Milivojevic from Serbia. I saw in your presentation that you didn't receive some information from 3 countries, Serbia, Macedonia and Morocco. Is it true?
It's not that we didn't receive the information, it was that we could not do the contact with the national focal point.
We have said, sorry, that we have interviewed, we were able, and that's good, to gather information from all 18 countries. But it was foreseen to interview all national focal points. And there are 3 national focal points which we didn't interview. We interviewed many people from Serbia.
Yeah, and this was, in the case of Serbia, it was a problem with the contact we got to, we get the list of contacts, we contact the national focal point. And it,
okay, I fulfilled this survey and maybe you didn't like this or something, so it was my question. But it was good, my feedback was good, just to know. But I have one recommendation. I saw in your slide of recommendation number 6, some contacts with other, let's say, health organizations, WHO, etc. But I have one recommendation for implementer for the possible next Medipied project, to connect with COE initiative and to see other previous projects, especially in B part, because this is CBRN COE initiative, will be part because we already had some project, for example, biosafety, biosecurity, and this is important for the preparation of the project's activity because European Commission don't like to overlap some activities. It's very simple. So just to see results of the previous project and everything will be okay. Thank you.
Thank you to you. In fact, just to mention that is already included in the, the written report. I didn't mention the says it in concrete, but agree with you. So absolutely.
Good morning. Thank you for this exhaustive report. I was a little bit confused when you are presenting the results. When you said it must be focused on the job training, it is. It is the basic of this field epidemiology program. When you said that we need to identify expected capacities, I would like to remind that it was like this, and it was based on our need assessment, and we have identified domains according to this. When you said that we need clear strategy at national level, it is. It was based on this, and I would like to ask our colleagues from different countries. I am a little bit confused because we use this approach to develop the whole program. It was our basic since the beginning with ECDC, with all European countries who were involved with us. It was according to our needs. And it is like this during the implementation, during the development of the project, and after that during the implementation phase. And we have highlighted that we need to revise our needs to be more focused on what are emerging and what are the new priorities related to this. And also, for me, there is, if there is something that we discussed a lot with all of us, it's the implication of all our countries in the project with an equal contribution. That means we are all in the same power for this project. And here, we highlighted during different discussions that we need to specify mechanism of collaboration between the ownership of the program, who are countries, and other partners who are involved in the implementation of the project, on the financing aspect of the project, those who are involved in the technical support of the project. The commitment of countries is here. That's why we are here today. That's why we are here, all of us, very busy people who have a lot of work, continue to be involved in this project because we are committed in this project, because we need really this project for all of us. That's I was a little bit confused about this. By sure, we need to improve the collaboration. We need to improve the mechanism of collaboration between all of us. Thank you.
Hello, Nisaf. It's true, and we consider that the on-job learning is the base, and it's what it's ensuring the work. But we are assessing 18 countries, and in the first phase, only 8 countries had this possibility to have fellowships. Then is in this sense that we are saying, and we were saying it, I think you were mentioning the recommendation that this, in a new program, if it has to be, if on-job learning is like the rationale, one of the main bases for this program, and we are doing a program of 18 countries, the program cannot absorb all the people, but maybe to consider other kind of proposals for these countries who has not on-job learning. And what is more important is that the cascade training, for example, that it's to also integrate on-job learning. You know, when we are recommending that on-job learning should be considered, widely, is because we really know that it's effective, it works, and in Medipiet, for 8 countries, it has been, in fact, the main conclusion is that there is very different, and one of the factors is the issue of accessing to the fellowship program. Then in this sense, what we saw, we are assessing the whole program as a whole. We are not assessing the fellowship program only. Then this is what we see, and in terms of existing capacities, yes, the fellowship has the competencies, they are defined, but again, it's not all the countries who, then there is like 2 or 3 or 4 levels in this program, and this is what we were trying to reflect, that it's important to have this in mind, because but also the participation, no? And all has been different, and maybe also it's because there is a lot of focus in one option, and maybe I'm a country, I don't have a training site, or I don't want to have it, then I would like to, maybe I don't want to follow exactly, then the idea is to identify it for, you already did it maybe in the first phase, it was very focused to the competencies, etc., etc. The needs assessment we had from this program is from 2008, from the EPI-South program. The specific needs assessment, the only document we could review was for this, and it's already almost 9 years ago, then it's also important. In terms of clear national strategy, in terms of capacity building, in the evaluation we saw that it's very uneven among countries. There are countries who have very clear that they want an EFTP, and maybe others that they don't want an EFTP, but they want to put all the inputs in the residency, and there are countries who doesn't have it so clear. And this is what we found out according to our assessment. We already said it, I don't think that the implication of all countries will be always different, because also there is priorities, needs, and the perceptions that are evolving. In terms of collaboration, when we are talking about collaboration, we are talking in general on a specific collaboration beyond Medipiet. It's not within Medipiet. And I don't know if I clarify a bit your confusion, Nisaf, if there is anything you want to mention, or I missed.
I add something here. This is according to my observation during Spezies, because the interview it is done there. Not all interviewers are familiar with the program, because there were interview participants that participated maybe for the first or second time in the project. They were, for example, external participants participated with article, they came in review module, and they had chance to be interviewed. And they were not very familiar with a substantial of the project. I'm sorry that this affects to that conclusion. Yes, yeah.
We had also the survey that was giving us a more wider input for some aspects of the evaluation.
So my name is Stella Georgidze, National Focal Point, Republic of Moldova. I would like to mention that you conduct really amazing work, and I can imagine how difficult it is to achieve the result what you present today. But maybe because we discussed yesterday and today we discuss about continuation. In order to avoid at the final of the next stage the situation when one of our conclusions will be that we have activity-based project, not result-based project, maybe it's good from the beginning to think about monitoring and evaluation tool, and to get familiar all
participants or key person who at the end of the project will be asked what they think about the project, if the project achieved the purpose, if the objectives was implemented, if the results of the project itself is good or not. Maybe it's good to organize, I don't know, a training related to result-based management. And maybe in this situation, at least responsible people will understand on what aspect of work we have to be focused. In general, I support Nada comments. This project has a little bit another purpose. Training people, strengthen the capacity, be sure that all core competencies is in place or is implementing or is going to be implemented in the country in the standard approach. But again, for me, at this stage, it's important to be at the beginning of the project to see what will be monitoring and evaluation tool and to be familiar with this, not only process, but the results what project is expected from participants.
Well, I think we completely agree that this is really very important, and for us, it will be also important that, you know, and this is when we were saying to focus at country, it's like, okay, me as country, what I want to get from here, what are the results that I expect, so also countries can monitor and see if something should be adjusted, or monitoring is very useful, and it's very important to manage and to be able to adapt, and there is also accountability that it's very important, no?
For instance, no, sorry, because you were, please. No, I wanted to add just one question, because in this, first of all, preliminary, let's say, thing to share today, and also in the frame of the evaluation, you cannot evaluate everything. And there is like a sort of, let's say, soft things that are not very clearly possible to explain, but for us also is very important. And I would like to mention, for instance, the changes in mind, cultural change, in the things that professionals think about that. This is a very important, let's say, underlying objective of this kind of interventions, in my view, and very difficult to measure, of course, and very difficult to be able to objectively, you know, to say, but we are rather sure that through this program, SIMS are, you know, in the earth to be able to change minds in many professionals, that the way that they are approaching to epidemiology, field epidemiology, and so on, is completely different. So in that sense, this kind of effects that we are not mentioning here, for the future, also we consider, even if it's not in the frame of our evaluation, that are very important to be there. Sorry, it was just a point.
No, thank you very much. And thank you for this presentation. To me, I have a feeling that you have evaluated something that was as it was not intended. I mean, most of the comments here on the evaluation is, and I agree with some of the comments before, that it's an evaluation of something that is much larger, and I think it's so important to really define that training, MEDIPIET, others, is one part of the overall core capacities. And if we're going back to IHR, a trained workforce is one of the core capacities. So in a way, it is a target by itself to have a trained workforce, because, of course, the overall aims of IHR, the overall aims of public health is, of course, much, much wider. But in order to achieve these more broader public health goals, I really believe that a trained workforce by itself is a very, very key component, together with a good surveillance network, together with all the others. So it's to me, I have a feeling that it's shooting over the target in relation to what were the objectives when we were planning for these two phases. Then I would very much support what Nisaf was saying about the national ownership, because this, to me, representing ECDC, I think that what has really amazed me so much is the immense feeling of national ownership from the very, very beginning. And it could have been easy just to make a carbon copy of the EPIET program. I mean, that would be so easy to just replicate the modules, but it's not. MEDIPET is not a carbon copy of it, and this is just because the needs, the national needs in these countries are different from the national needs in the EU countries. And that has affected the curriculum, that has affected what are the modules, etc. To me, it feels almost a little bit unfair to the colleagues here, because I really see a very strong national ownership. Thank you.
Okay, when we got the assignment of evaluating, it was to evaluate this project as a development cooperation project, which we see that training is, as Tina said, it's a tool. We were not supposed to measure the quality of the training program, which is beyond any doubt of high quality. That was not what we were supposed to do. The satisfaction is very high. I think we said in the conclusions, everybody believes this MEDIPET training program it reflects their needs, and it goes to their needs. But what we are saying basically here is what is the purpose of this training? If you have 2 or 4 people very much trained in each country that have done the complete fellowship, it is important to see how you get this knowledge over to other epidemiologists in the country in order to really have an impact. That is what basically we think is missing, or maybe should be in the next project to be more focused. Because if it only is, if you only have 2 or 4 very trained people, because the scope of the other external participants is very broad. It's impossible. Some have only participated in 1 module, other in 7. There's no such scientific coordination support as the fellows have. So it's very difficult to measure what are the impact. With fellows, there can be a big impact. The only thing we think is if all the countries are clear what is supposed to be done with these fellows, so that what MEDIPET gives them goes beyond the knowledge they have, the impact of the project will be higher. Maybe we didn't explain it the right way, but maybe now I didn't do it. But that's the idea. It's behind what we're saying. I don't know if I make myself clear.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly with that purpose, we built into MEDIPET something that is not an EPIET, and that is the cascading of training. The cascading of training is, of course, a stepwise process. You can't start cascading until you have a sufficient number of it. And if I'm comparing MEDIPET to EPIET in the EU, I think in a very, very short time, and we have seen examples of this in the posters and in the presentations, how in country after country, now the fellows are really used for the cascading and used as a national resource. So also here, I think that it has even here been beyond the expectations we had in a very few years. And I really think that this needs to be acknowledged, because we don't have that the same way in the EU countries. And in the EU countries, we have been having a similar training programs for 20 years. So here I think that Medipiet is really leading the way, and we should be learning in the EU side from Medipiet.
Sorry, 1 second. I want to say, we agree, but we see that sometimes Medipiet is equal to the fellowship program. You know what I mean? For us, it's not. When we do the evaluation, well, and the TOTs and the annual conference, but the issue is that we were doing the assessment for a wider, and the main conclusion is that there is very different, and normally one of the issues that affects achievement is related to the issue of having fellows or not. But I think it's this perspective on development or on more on the capacity building itself, maybe that there is making these confusions.
I would like to say something here. First of all, thank you very much for your study, your evaluation. I see it also a little bit from outside Medipiet, because I'm not daily in it. What comes out, it's clear from your view on Medipiet, is that, of course, I'm sure Medipiet is doing a fantastic job, but the way we show it to the outside, at least perceived in the outside, is maybe not sufficiently well prepared. It is like that very often when you have rather technical projects, we look at the technology, the technique, at what we have to do, because of course we know exactly which is the purpose why we do it. But we very often forget to tell the others why we do it. And maybe there we have to learn a little bit from what they say, is that, but why do you do all these trainings? Why it is organized like that, you see? And this is maybe somewhere where we have to reflect a little bit for the next future. I must say, when I saw your video on the first day, there you say that. You say why you do Medipiet, what's the objective. So maybe here and there we should be a little bit more, I would say, explicit on that. That's why the view of outsiders is always interesting, because we are too much, we say, the nez dans le guidon, like a cyclist who is going up in the Tour de France a hill. So we have to do that, certainly, especially when if we want, and what I told you yesterday, it's important, when we will go back to our decision makers and say, listen, now we have to have a recognition. You mentioned somewhere that the fellows should get a kind of recognition from the authorities so that they do not run away, so that this diploma becomes part of their career and is added value in their CV, and so on and so forth. It is also, and this means that at a certain moment you have to convince your authorities, your ministers, you name them, that this is important. And why is it important? Because this is the objective it fulfills. In fact, you are here to protect your countries. And by protecting your country, you protect your neighbors and you protect us. So this has to be maybe a little bit more explicit in the way we communicate, let's say. Otherwise, I think personally, I'm very satisfied with this, because plenty of fellows, plenty of trainees, etc., the impact is there. And I like very much what you said, Carl, that we have to learn from Medipiet to maybe improve what we are doing inside, which is a very good lesson, because we often think that we know everything inside, but no, we don't. And we can learn a lot from the others. Thank you again very much for your study.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Paula Vasconcelos. I'm from Portugal, a country that is not at the Medipiet. So I think I'm a little bit external enough to make some comments that will be not from inside. I fully agree with we just heard that sometimes we are so engaged internally that we do not see, or we do not perceive how the others perceive us. And give me some time, because I want to make it clear some aspects. Funny enough, I think that the paper from Medipiet, when they say clearly that it's been established under the regional approach to contribute to the overall objective of enhancing health security. For me, that says enough already. So the objective is very clear. When we come to evaluate something, in our opinion, we are external, don't forget that. We have been involved by invitation and by receiving internal assignments from fellows. So the point is, for us, when you want to assess something, it's not academic, it's not a business, it's not a project, it's the public health things that we are so difficult to approach. Even WHO, when they give us the 10 essential public health functions, they don't give us the tools to assess those. We don't have indicators for those. So when we talk on global health security, there are two tools we should go, and those would be the indicators we would look for if we would be evaluators. And you have them. International health regulation has exactly things like first one is global partnership. Second is strengthening national capacities on prevention, surveillance, control, and response. The third one is security in public health related to traveling and transport. The fourth is increasing alert. The fifth is specific risk in strengthening. The sixth, sustained procedures, and so on, so on. Those are the ones from international health relation. And then you have the ones from global security, antimicrobial resistance, zoonotic diseases, biosafety, biosecurity, immunization, national labs, surveillance real time, reporting, workforce development, emergency operation centers, law enforcement, intersectoral and other public health approach, and last one, countermeasures and deployment. So tell me if this project doesn't cover those indicators in both major things.
Yeah, in this sense, this is I think, Paula, what we were trying to focus is that the objective, the general objective is clear, but what we are missing, and it should be constructed because all the people should, is the logic chain to reach to this objective. 1 second. We have been, for example, considering, and it's I think it's in one of the conclusions, and in the report will be more, like the indicator to the available countries from the international health regulations for several of the core competencies, etc., etc. The issue is that it's, of course, it depends. You can put your once you design clear, you can have very clear. For us, to have people trained it is maybe a condition to enhance health security or to improve health security, but it's important to have and as you said, you have to see which has been the improvements at procedures, which has been the improvement, all these aspects that are considered in international health regulation, and it's in order only to see in the capacity building is to see, okay, and later on, how this has changed. And there are these indicators that can be used. It's not that cannot be used.
My comment is slightly more positive, but it's quite aligned with what has been said. And actually about this topic of monitoring and evaluation, because in the development of field epidemiology training programs, there is already existing guidance that recommends to write a logic model where you talk about what are the inputs, what are the processes, outputs, outcomes, and impact. And the advantage of doing this since the very beginning is that later on in evaluation processes helps. So my understanding from what you told us is that what we have focused quite a lot is in the aspect of processes, which is the delivery of the training. And that maybe we need to invest a bit more time on looking at what are our objectives in terms of output, outcome, and impact, so that later on we can evaluate the results of those objectives. So that is actually this use of monitoring and evaluation techniques in the writing of the updated guide or plan or strategy for MEDIPIET. And one reflection that I want to share is that about the country priorities versus the regional, and we have been discussing also quite a lot about this, we need to be careful because this is still a regional program. So I think that while we pay attention to the specific needs of each country, it would be very important to avoid losing the focus of the regional. Thanks.
Yeah, in this sense, the idea to focus on national countries, of course, we were discussing the other day with, it's not it's at least to identify what MEDIPIET will serve to the different countries. We are not saying that the program should be covering all the needs of the different countries. This is not the program, but at least to have this link that with the national, because it has to be, otherwise it will be, and then when you are developing the program, you can identify also which are the areas that maybe at one point even there is some countries that are really very interested, but they were not covered, and maybe it could be done. It's like to have it more tailored.
This recommendation comes from one conclusion. It's basically we have seen that what we said, no? When countries identified better or could identify clearly in what aspects MEDIPIET could help them nationally, they participated much more actively. Thus, what we recommend basically is to help them find the link, not to change. It's a regional project. And regarding results-based monitoring, I think you said it better than us. Basically, that's what we wanted to express, what you have said.
Okay.
Yes, Isabel.
Me? Okay, thank you. Just to, I agree with many gaps and recommendations you have mentioned, and we already have included in our new proposal in agreement with ECDC. But I would like to highlight something that I think is really important for us, and maybe it has been a bit understood and not well understood in this evaluation. I would like to highlight that FTP programs and training in epidemiology is a core function, is a goal for a public health institution, not a tool, it's a goal. So it is included in international health regulation and so on. And we already have a very strong scientific evidence that FTP programs is working all over the world, not only in the CDC, Atlanta, United States, not only in the European Union, but also everywhere. So we have scientific evidence proving that. This is important. There is another thing that is also important. We have standard of quality for this FTP program all over the world, recognized everywhere. So it's a bit difficult to balance the country needs and the quality standard for an FTP program. I think that MEDIPIET project has taken into account this issue because it's important to be adapted to the country needs because they are really different. The European Union and the Mediterranean and the Black Sea countries, but we need to keep quality standards that is really important, not only in European Union, but also in Mediterranean countries. So I think it's not that bad. We need to improve, of course, but it's not that bad. Quality standard need to keep in mind everywhere, every program.
I completely agree. We consider the program was of very high quality, was having effects. We were just assessing how these resources could be, enhanced.
Thank you for your work you've done. My name is Vladimir Mikic. I'm now in the role of alternate national focal point for Macedonia. So I'd like to point on your finding number 11, that when you're saying that the achievement in the training were mainly focused on surveillance, while the response in outbreak was limited. I really find that conclusion hard to believe, because the most of, if you see the abstract book in this annual scientific conference, you'll see that actually one of the core competencies and one of the core gains of this project was actually outbreak investigation and response. It is because of the work of the fellows and the others who were involved that a lot of outbreaks were caught on time with the right implementing measures, and that they were stopped. So I'm really intrigued, how did you get this finding? Also the finding number 14, you say that the network is informal. Yes, in general it's informal. It's hard to make a formal network among so many countries. And one of, sometimes informal network works better than formal ones. But also one of your recommendation is to create a mailing list. You already have that mailing list. You use it for your surveys. So yeah. This is just few comments on the findings and recommendations. Thank you.
Okay. In this sense, the issue of outbreak investigation has been something that has appeared in our data collection during the evaluation. It was, for example, and when in this conclusion, it's at institutional level, it's not at individual level. One second. And then in this sense, most of the countries, they were reporting on issues on surveillance. This is what we have. It's an evidence. But even though if you go further to, for example, the portfolios of fellows, you would see also sometimes that surveillance in the next steps or the plans in the future is something that it appears as a main issue. Then, regarding, this is what we find out, maybe it's surprising, but it's at institutional level. We are not saying that there is individuals that now can perform better outbreak investigation, but there was very little countries that has developed guidelines for outbreak investigations, etc., etc. This is what we find out. This is what the reports we had at institutional level. In terms of informal networking, and this is linked with our recommendation, we consider and we recommend to keep it. You know, the recommendation of network is this network, if it's for professional sharing, we recommend to keep it at personal level, because institutionalizing will be, maybe will make this network not to go as fluid. We think that it should be put something, it could be a mailing list to enhance this participation and to have like an engine, no, to move it, but that's the only, we completely agree in this sense. And I don't know, the last one, I didn't think.
Informal is a statement. We're not judging, we're not saying it's bad. In our recommendation it says it's good. So.
Yeah, I think you want to say something about the outbreak investigation?
That institution, so yes, it's true. I mean, they have contract with the institution. The Medipiet signs contract with the institution and with the fellows as well. So if we talk about the fellows who improve their knowledge, so building capacities in the fellows, you actually build the capacity of the institution, and this is what the previous speakers already said. So the outbreak response. It's in the core competencies. Each fellow has to complete at least 2 outbreak investigations. So, besides the surveillance, so it's not just about the surveillance. Because the surveillance is action for data. I mean, that was the first sentence we learned in here. So we have information for action, right? And
it's true that when we were talking about response, maybe we were parceling much, because at the end all the things are interlinked, surveillance with response, you know, it's not, you cannot separate it. But we were thinking more on once there is an outbreak, the response, no, the teams that implement in this sense, and this is also one of the we had the sources of information of the interviews, also from the survey, but also on the training site appraisal and midterm review. This is also mentioned. There is like several aspects that tell us that in general there is. That doesn't mean that there is no countries who has the full responsibilities on outbreak investigation, but this is not always the reality.
Good morning to everybody. My name is Alena Petráková, and many of you know me in person, many of you just from the papers. And I will follow up what already was said here, but mostly what Paola was saying, being since October 2014 external observer, but I will take us back, and you did extraordinary work to thank you for evaluating training program in many details, recommendations, etc., conclusions and recommendations. But what I think might be also integrated into the evaluation is that we have then we have to go, and it's related with global health security, which is extremely difficult task, and it's what Paola was mentioning. And the whole story of Medipiet started in 2012 in Lampedusa, when the Commissioner for Health, in fact, was requesting immediate action to do something in a view of capacity development broadly, in a view of global security increasing, in fact, increasing the health security that time. And one of the tasks why we were able to have financing for the preparatory phase, which was before this 4 years implementation phase, was to add health, because that time, in a view of global and health security in general, health was not taken into the account when talking about CBRN teams, CBRN activities in countries. And I think that it's not visible, but that this is one of the non-visible achievements that the health is taken more seriously, I will say, as external observer in many countries, really, and I see NADA here, and we work together with other countries, but mentioning NADA, for example, Lebanon or Jordan, which I was visiting, that the health became to be, and health professionals, Ministry of Health, became to be taken into the account when talking about CBRN. And in fact, it's why I think that the approach was taken that time based on recommendations. Yes, use existing sources, not overlap. Don't invest new EU money in something, just developing something from scratch. It's why partly FETP was taken, partly EPIET, UFEM, and other training programs, because there are differences in education, as Carmen was mentioning, in many countries. So I think that final ending with one lesson learned was, yes, it's possible to add health to CBRN topics at the country, and it means doing, in fact, a very good job for improving, strengthening health security across borders between continents as well. So thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you, and tend to agree with you. In that sense, I think Medipiet has been clearly successful. But it's not, as you are saying, it's not so visible in this frame, which is, yeah.
But for the future, I think, thank you very much for reaction. But for future, in fact, and for making decision how to go ahead, you think all recommendations that this is the point which might be taken into the account as well, that this is the part of something what we are developing, and it's not easy. When we are talking about global health security, global health diplomacy, we go now beyond it. And for global health diplomacy, I think that that's all all people did excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you. There was someone missing, yeah?
Well, I'm Sophie Le Carré from the GRC, and I would like to congratulate you for the very nice work you have done. As the GRC, we are responsible for the evaluation, the following of the project, and it's not easy to have an outside view. Of course, now we have a completely different view. I've seen that it has raised a lively debate, but I think it's nice not to be in agreement always with everyone. It's a good opportunity for us to change a little the way the project will be built in the future. And I know people are not happy when they are criticized, but I think it has to be seen as a positive point to build something better. And thank you for this.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if there is any other issue.
I think we will stop here and